Two rear-drive luxury coupes turned into 400-plus horsepower tire-smoking machines. This head-to-head sets itself up pretty nicely, doesn't it?
This is the manliest thing I've ever done in my life.
The newcomer this time is the Lexus RCF, which means it's the fast version of the RC Coupe. It's powered by a 467-horse naturally aspirated V8 and drives its rear wheels through an 8-speed automatic. The simplicity ends there though, as this model has an electronically controlled torque vectoring differential that employs 2 electric motors, 2 planetary gear sets, and 2 clutches to help distribute power to each wheel correctly. The design? It's different, to put it kindly. But looking at the dimensions, it's easy to see the car Lexus was targeting. That would be the BMW M4. Yeah, BMW's dropped the M3 Coupe name, but the bigger shock might be that BMW's also dropped naturally aspirated engines. Its twin-turbo 3-liter straight-six may be down 42 horse to the RCF, but it makes 17 pound-feet more torque. This model also has BMW's 7-speed twin-clutch automatic gearbox and carbon-ceramic brakes as options. Crucially, it's carrying over 400 pounds less than the Lexus. The M4 edges out the RCF at the test track. With a better power-to-weight ratio and a more effective launch, the M4 reaches 63/10 of a second before the RCF. Its advantage extends to a half second and 520 miles an hour at the quarter mile, showing that the M4 gets out of the hole slightly better and accelerates stronger as the run continues. Braking performance again goes to the M4. Its best stop from 60 took just 98 feet. The RCF required 9 feet more at 107 feet. The M4 completes its figure-8 lap 7/10 of a second faster than the RCF. It also generates 0.06 higher average lateral G. What I like about the RCF more than the M4 is that sound. That's coming courtesy of a V8 that's revving nice and cleanly up and slightly past 7,000 RPM. I'm gonna miss that. I'm really gonna miss that kind of thing as all these sort of performance luxury coupe and sedans move to twin turbo engines. There's just something about revving out a naturally aspirated engine, that instant response it gives you on the throttle, and that's a nice sound. It's not a beautiful sing-song noise, but it's a nice guttural roar. But the RCF is an interesting car. I really liked the ISF. This car is a little bit more overt. This thing is really in your face with its design and everything that's happening in here. And there's parts of it that I don't like, in terms of aesthetics, but I appreciate the effort. This car has a certain charisma just in the look of it that the M4 doesn't. Now handling. Dynamically, this is not on par with the M4. We know this thing has lower performance numbers. We know a lot of that is because it weighs so much more than the M4 and has less torque. Yet, if you were to drive it in isolation, you wouldn't really care because it's pretty fun. You have really accurate, precise steering. You have, again, that lovely sound. And it's really easy to point and shoot. You don't have to worry too much about crazy in-your-face oversteer. You don't have to worry about the finer elements of control. This is fun in a way that's not as aggressive as the M4, but still pretty enjoyable. When you really really start getting out to the dynamic edge though, I feel that this comes up a little bit short. It's not as nimble as the M4. It's not as playful. The tail is nowhere near as active or as engaging as the M4's is. The chassis is, again, stable. The steering feels good. The throttle response is really good too. The braking power is strong. And if you work it a little bit, you can just get the slightest bit of oversteer. Of course, if you were to flick it in, you could do big drifts all day. Yeah, there we go. There we go. But ultimately, you sense the weight. In the slower corners and some of the switchbacks, when you're low in the tack and you can't really downshift to first, you sense the weight is a problem. And 4,000 pounds or so for a two-door sports coupe is rather shocking, just to be frank about it. That's a lot of car in terms of mass, and it comes up and hurts this car dynamically pretty much throughout the board. That said, you're not going to be disappointed with this car, I don't think, at all. In fact, if you're a fan of the styling, if you're a fan of the V8, this thing for you will be a better choice than the M4. But if you're searching for that extra thrilling edge, I think the M4 is the way to go. This is a good car. The addition of all that torque makes for a completely different driving experience. You can be a little bit lazier with your gear selection, you can be a little bit lazier with your throttle, but you can focus more on the steering and putting the car exactly where you want it. I really like the rear end of this car. It's tailored so nicely, and you can use the throttle in conjunction with the steering to help the car rotate through a corner. That diff really helps the car turn. You get legit throttle steer, and that can really help you adjust your line when you feel brave enough to commit to it. And when you do get a little oversteer, it's so easy to correct that the whole process is just so much fun to drive. Now, one advantage this has over the RCF is that it's 400 pounds lighter, and that makes for improvements everywhere in the driving experience. The corners feel better, the acceleration feels sharper, the braking is improved. You can't get around weight. You can't fight that. And although the RCF makes more horsepower, the torque in this thing makes this car feel more powerful. If I do have a complaint, it's the sound of the straight six. So it just isn't as sing-song as the last gen M3's V8, and it doesn't sound as good as the RCF's V8 either. Okay, but forget all that, because the chassis in this car is so good. The car is precise, it's agile, you can bend it to your whim, and you end up going really fast, looking back on the things that you just did a few corners behind you going, I shouldn't have done that, but you did. And you had a great time. Little oversteer there, that's fine. Coming up over this hill is really fun when it takes flat. Then like a little bit of oversteer at 105 miles an hour to make your day. Oh man. This car is so powerful, but also so balanced and so controllable. It gives you all the options with regard to handling that you want. You can make it stable, you can upset it, slide it around like crazy. You can control it through steering, through balancing the weight around the chassis, through throttle application, through braking. It makes for a simply delightful handling machine when you know what you're doing. It's addicting putting this car around corners, lining up apexes, knocking them down. It can be neat and tidy when you want it to be, and then it can be an absolute drift machine when you want it to be. And that's what I love about a good sports car, is it gives you that kind of flexibility. RCF has its work cut out for him. So does the new C63, the Audi, whatever, RS4, Cadillac CTS-V or ATS-V, whatever they end up doing. They've got some real work cut out for them. But how could we fully test these two without a visit to the track? Also, the Lexus changed colors.
Yeah, rev out that V8 in the Lexus RCF. There's a little flap that opens up in the intake. Sounds and feels like a racing engine. The Lexus puts down power really well, very little wheel spin. As long as you're driving with any kind of sense, it accelerates very well off the corner. Transmission is terrific. Quick, ultra smooth upshifts and downshifts. It's got a little beat just as we get to redline. I like that. The Lexus puts the power to the ground. I give Lexus a lot of credit for that. A couple of laps in and the brakes are still very strong. I'm not a fan of the car being so soft in roll. I had a race engineer once tell me that softness is grip as long as you can stand the roll. But we got a little float here through the 100-mile-an-hour sweeper. It's funny, we have the advantage that softness is compliance, soaks up the bumps, it's good in ride, and that gives good control on the big bumps. Downside is in a transition, it just takes forever for the weight to transfer. Seems to slow the car down a little bit. On power understeer all the way around the banked bowl. See that? We got a little push under acceleration. Whereas the BMW has a tendency to want to spin the rears and get the car all sideways. Little different personality. We can drift it if we want, but it doesn't do it unless you really make it get sideways. You gotta force it. So it's well balanced, definitely on the understeer side in terms of its chassis balance, whereas the BMW is on the oversteer side in its chassis balance. The Lexus is a softer package, great brakes, wonderful engine. I find myself missing that fat, delicious torque that the BMW delivers on the low end, and I don't like the soft shocks and roll and the transitions out here on the racetrack. The M4 Turbo, 6-cylinder, sounds like a V8 and pulls like a V8. The power is really impressive. Just keeps pulling as the revs rise. Very little sensation of lag. Feel that torque just digging from the mid-range RPM out of the corner. It's asking a lot of those big Michelins though. 400 pound-feet of torque means you roll the throttle in to keep the rear tires hooked up on track. But in second gear, I gotta be really careful with the power or I can just light it up. A lot of torque. See? The steering is quick and precise. It's a BMW. We'd expect that. So it makes those oversteer moments pretty easy to catch. Transmission is a sweetheart. You can adjust the aggressiveness and we have it right in the middle. Quick, but not harsh. I can downshift right in the middle of the corner as I just did. Don't even feel it. That's how a good shift is. You don't feel it. Braking, as you'd expect, powerful. I'm not getting any fade. Only time the ABS can't keep up is if I hit a big bump in a hard braking zone. It interferes, but you know, it's trying to keep that tire from locking up. Into the fast kink. We're bouncing, we're turning, we're braking. And let me tell you, the shock absorbers are doing a great job. The M4 is well damped. Without harshness, we have the control and we have the compliance. The This is the non-adjustable version, and the car is extremely well damped in transitions. I really like the combination of the compliance over the bumps and then the tight body control as we turn in. See, there's not a strong sensation of roll. This car is really working. I like the M4. The Lexus RCF engine is just a delicious, racy V8, but the understeer and the soft shocks mean that if I were to pick one for the track, I'd go with the BMW M4.
And now, a tire rack hot lap. Considering the performance disparity during testing, we were surprised to see the RCF just 0.3 of a second behind the M4 at the racetrack. That's a genuinely impressive performance from Lexus, perhaps indicating that the M4's supremely enjoyable oversteer might be holding it back. Despite its wildly aggressive design, the RCF was much more calm at its limits, making it feel easy to drive quickly and approachable. Alas, it felt like there wasn't much beyond those limits you could get. The RCF isn't the M4 for better and worse. It remains satisfying to drive with a naturally aspirated V8 that sounds great and a transmission that shifts well. And while we don't care for the styling at all, you can at least respect Lexus for trying. It also might matter to some that its performance is near the M4's level, but that it doesn't have a BMW badge. For everyone else, the M4 is more satisfying to drive the harder you push it. It offers a higher performance envelope than the Lexus, both in terms of outright speed and driver satisfaction. Simply, it's faster and it's more fun. And for those reasons, the M4 wins this episode of Head to Head. Also, that oversteer over that hill was... How did that feel?
Like you're like dancing on ice.
The first time I did that, I was like, and then there I was like, woohoo!
I'm using the paddle shifters. They're incredibly easy. Easy and quick. Just doesn't take much skill anymore. Any monkey can drive these things.